So now hair. I'm going to call his hair. I'm going to come up a little bit. I want to put the first color of his hair. I got to show you his hair. Okay. So he's got kind of this typical red hair. So in review, first wash, second wash, we went for shadows. This wash was for darks. So that really, it really identified his features. And from this point on, again, I call that almost 80% of the painting, because the rest of it is deepening the shadows, and then the shirt and the hair is a whole nother beast that I don't know if we'll get to, but I will show you. This is that orange. Okay, so what we're gonna do on the first wash on his hair is notice the lights on his hair, the back of his hair and the strands of his hair. And on the left side is really, really dark. I'm going to paint the light of his hair right now. It's just kind of like doing the first wash. There's a little red on here, but that's insignificant compared to his cheek. So now let's do that. Let me show you. So now I'm thinking first wash on his hair. And I'm going to come up with a puddle of some kind of a hair, and I'll test it. I'm going to add a little, maybe this red to it. Here's my test. Okay, that's too, it's not bad, I guess. But I wanted the light. So this is his hair. I'm not looking at strands right now. I'm mopping in this kind of light part of his hair, the light strands of his hair. I'm going to make this way darker where it needs to be dark, but this is getting his first wash in.
What colors did you use for that?
This is burnt sienna, essentially. Burnt sienna and the original red, the facial red. Burnt sienna kind of looks red. Okay, so I'm doing the first wash on his hair, right? So I'm dampening his hair. The edges of, right away, hair is soft. So you don't want a hard edge here. So right away, I'm going to touch the edge of this paint with a damp brush, clean damp brush. I'm going to soften that edge. The back side, not so important, but you don't want a hard edge of the hair on the side of his face. So all it takes is a damp brush. So now as this is coming down, this is kind of like a flat wash now. This side of his hair is really dark. And if I do this while it's damp, I can add in some ultramarine blue while I'm doing this, because this hair is going to be really dark on this side. I'm going to come down. Let's see, you're seeing this. So it comes down on the side of his face, and I'm going to kind of carefully follow my pencil lines here. And then I'll add some more of the red in here. And then his kind of some flips, but I'm not going to worry about the tips of the hair yet. Don't start painting flips and twists of hair yet. You'll do that later. Okay, so now there's a little bit of part in the top of his hair, and there's a little bit here, since I have that dark on my brush. This is just the first wash of his hair. Just while it's damp, it'll still soften out. Okay. All right, we got a lot to go on the hair. But while it's damp, it'll still be soft. Tend to the edges. I'm on a number 5 brush while this edge is damp. I don't want to go in there. I want this brush to not bloom into his hair. So I'm just touching the edge with a damp brush, not a wet brush, just to soften a little bit. Okay, his shirt is blue. I'm going to use my little blue here. This is the first wash on his shirt. All I want to do is get it kind of dark. Okay, so here's just kind of blue. Okay, and brushy, moppy strokes, because you don't want, unless you make the strokes the direction of his shirt. Now I'm going to switch colors because one color is boring. So I'm going to take ultramarine blue or any other blue just to make it interesting rather than all one color. So I'm just following the shirt line down, mopping it out, and just different shapes. And, you know, while it's light, you could add a little creases and wrinkles if you wanted into it. All right, so that is first wash on his hair, first wash on his shirt. We'll let that dry. All right. His face now, this is where the fun starts. We have got kind of the base of his face done. Now we start, okay, now on Richard here, this was his darks or his shadows. The next shot here, this is darks. I added a little bit more dark and I did his eyes. This is layer, this is the third wash. Lights, shadows, darks. That's where this is. And you notice his teeth too? His teeth aren't white. Teeth were covered by his, teeth are never white. Jewelry is white. Whites of eyes are flesh color. But teeth are never white, even if they are white. Okay, so this was darks, and that's what we did. And then I did some of his hair because his hair was gray. Now this is the stage we're at now, and this is when we're going to start to have some of these triad colors to get the darker darks. He's got gray eyebrows, so that kind of was the grays. But now this is the stage we're at now. We got the shirt. Here's no shirt. Here's first wash of shirt. And then this is when you start modeling the shirt at the same stage that we're going to be modeling the face.
Okay, can I ask you a question then? So you went with the little boy in the red tones because he is obviously a redhead and reddish skin. So in Richard, you use the blue as your shadows.
You can see the red over on the side here. I did the exact same first and second washes of the same reds on Richard.
Oh, first and second for him. Okay. Because it looks like he won't use more blue.
Well, his first wash, I used blue on both of them. But we're going to use the blue now because I didn't want to take that time. So this is the same red wash, first wash, second wash. This is now, and this was the darks to get his eyes in the details. And now this layer, we're going to start to add some of this blue and red mix. Because that blue and red is going to make kind of a dark, fleshy shadow. And when we get into the dark spots here. Okay, so now that's what we're going to do. So now we have a flat, pretty well-developed base of him. We have only got one wash on the hair, one wash on the, we got a lot of detail to do now. Okay, so now I'm going to go into modeling him. And this is, like I say, this is what will take the majority of the time, but this is where the fun starts. This is, okay, so here we go. So this is kind of where we're heading. You can see the sides of his nose. All this area here is all done. We're going to go into these really, really darks. And how we're going to make those darks, we're going to start to use that blue. And that's kind of what I have here. And this is kind of what you have on your palette. So this is the blue and that's the red. So now if I mix this, this is the same red as we've been using up here. Here's the red. Here's the blue. And now somewhere in the middle, when these two touch, I'll start to get either a red dark. I'll either get, I'll get everything between, I can get that. I'm going to take some of that paint off of there. Or I'm going to put a little bit more red in there. Or I'm going to put a little more blue in there. So that color is kind of what we're going to go after here. If you see that. So it's a warm, dark blue. But see, that color is, I get it to the edge here. That's kind of the color of this blue and red. Maybe a little bit more red. But see, that's the dark. I don't know if you're getting glare or whatever, but so we want to have a brush on hand so we can thin it out. Okay, so I'm going to go to this puddle that I just made. You can see it here. Okay, so now I don't need it really dark. I don't want a strong mixture. I want to be able to control it. So I'm looking at the reference and I'm going to come in here and I can go into the hair. And I'm just going to kind of come down, and his whole eye is dark. I'm going to go down the side of his face, and I can see that this still isn't dark enough. I want that darker. So I'm going to go into a little bit more blue into this area here, and here, and maybe up here. And I'm going to come down the nose, and now that I'm out of the dark, okay, you can see I'm going to take some of that paint out. Now I'm going to mix into the warm. I'm going to go right to this edge, this wet edge, and I want to turn that a little bit warmer because I don't want it that bluish gray. And it's going to come down and it starts to get a little lighter. So I'm going to take out more of that. I'm going to rinse a little bit of that out, and I'm going to mush that in. Now I'm thinning that out. And then under his nose, this edge, I got to tend to this edge. It looks really bad right now. So I'm just going to clean my brush and just soften that edge and let it blend over the nose. And then it kind of wraps around the nose. And I want it to be a little warmer. And then this is up here. Okay, so now, actually that's a little darker in there. That's going to get much darker back here. So now, I got to keep an eye on my edges because you don't want any hard edges. Now underneath into the nostril, I'm going to go into that blue again. It's damp. So I'm just going to kind of, this is the fun part now. Again, it's just playing with moving between warm red, pure warm red, dark and darker red. Okay, so he comes along. If you notice the top of lips, there's a white band on the top of lips. There's a little node in the corner of his mouth. So this is kind of keeping a wet edge here. He comes down, and whether you can't see the reference right now, but it goes down. Now I want to go a little bit warmer, so I can go into my original batch here. And now it kind of comes around. So I'm coming out of the bluish mix and kind of going into the reddish mix. If you want to add a little yellow, like over here, this has some yellow into it because this is in sunlight. Yeah, that may be a little bit too yellow. I'll just go into my red, my original red, and just kind of blend that around. But it kind of adds another interesting color in here. I want to soften that out. He's got a little pocket right here where his chin is. Moppy, notice the moppy strokes. Okay, this area down here I want a little darker, so I'll go into my blue. You can see that, I hope. Now I go into my bluish side here, and I can add right here. This is damp, so I'm not going to get blooms. Underneath his chin is darker. I'm going to go a little bit bluer percentage down here, and I'm going to mop that in. And I can go into the shirt because the shirt is dark. Mop, 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 mop. I'm going to go into my red and blend that edge, and I'm going to go in again. Now maybe I'll go in a little yellow since you asked for it. This side here is a little highlight, wet edge. I come down here now. Now I want to dilute it out to nothing. So here's a damp brush. Now I just soften that edge as it goes into the sunlight. All right. Now he's starting to get some form. Okay, this part of his eye here, I'm going to go back into do the same thing I just did. Somewhere between the really dark and this. I'm going to test it. Now I'm dampening the paper. Okay, now I'm going to come in there here, and I'm going to take some of that moisture out. I'm going to go a little bit darker in there, so I'm going to go a little bit bluer. I'm going to add the bluer right in here. Add a little bluer into here, and I'm going to keep an eye on that edge, and he's got this little cheek line here. Okay, and I'm thinking I need to blend that. So now I go into pure red, because there's pure red if you can see it. Now I'm going to add blend the pure red into this. And I'm going to add pure red into this. Mop strokes. Maybe a little yellow because Patty likes yellow. Okay, so this is kind of a highlight color. So now I mixed a little red into it because it was a little yellowy. And then he comes down. Now I rinse that. I'm going to soften that edge. Take some of that moisture out, soften that edge. And now I want to soften this edge. Pure red, because I don't want that darker color, and it kind of comes down. He's got freckles. This kind of comes up here. Mop this up here. He's got that little thing there. All right, and then maybe a little cheek, and then a little chin. Lay that down kind of there. And now that's another layer darker. And he's starting to get the contours of his face in. Now this side of his face could very well be done, because that's I add a little yellow in there just for interest. But now he's getting darker. This still needs to be darker, and that side needs to be darker. Let me let this dry. I'll do a little bit into the hair. First wash, the next wash, we're going to look for shapes. I used blue and some of that red. This is a burnt sienna mix. So now I'm looking for shapes. This brush kind of works nice for it. You could use a flat too, but having a little point, so you're kind of looking for hair shapes. And when we get into a portrait class, I talk about all these little weird shapes in a hair. So so we're just kind of doing dark shapes in here. And I'll lift at the end, maybe. Okay. Those are hard edges. I will tend to those, but not at this moment. These are all hard shapes. But I want to do this at the same time. This is going to be really dark. So this is burnt sienna and more of the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, but more burnt sienna because he's got red hair. If it was brown hair, I'd be more blue. But he's got more tendency towards the red, so I'm just kicking up the mixture of the red burnt sienna kind of color. You get glare. Well, it's not terrible. You're getting a little glare. Okay, so I'm going to come down and carefully follow his face. And we still don't do the flips yet. So now I want to make this side really dark, because his whole side of his face is really dark. Okay. Okay, so there's some of these in here. Now these are still damp, but there's still darks in here, so I'll throw in some more blues. And I'll put in some blue flips in here. Now this is where I'll take the damp brush, and I'll use, this was that scrubber I talked about. This works nice because it's soft. It's not scrubber, it's a blender, or it's a lifter. So because I don't use flats, this is kind of the closest thing I have. Now I kind of do this little, it dried a little bit. I want to kind of blend these hairs in there and get, let me show you, I want to get strokes in here. See the little lights in there? So while it's damp, you kind of got to, you can see his highlights here. Now I'll show you. Okay, so now while it's damp, I can kind of come in here and I can kind of lift these little flips. Up on the top here, this is pigment down. I'm a lifter. I can come in here now, dry it, and I can kind of get strands, and I can kind of get movement of the hair. It's damp. It's going to flow in here, but you want to get rid of these edges. You don't want hard edges. But now all of a sudden, I can start to get little flips. Now this is when we can do the hair. When I take this paint here, and a lot of people will paint these little flips too soon. Now is when you paint the flips, because now I have paint here. This is a little brush. I can take this paint and lift. See, I'm lifting, and I can paint some of this stuff. Now I can lift and get a hair strands at the same time. If you did that too soon, you'd be making the hair longer. Now's the time to do it, because his hair is light. So you can get these little flips that you couldn't have got before. Like over here too. I have paint on my brush because I just lifted. Now I can come in here and get these little flips and twists or little strands. At this point, you know, if he's got a little something going on there, I can do that now. I'm just pushing the paint around. See these little dry brushes are, I'm kind of exaggerating because his hair wasn't like that, but you can get these now where you couldn't get them when you were doing the first washes. Okay. All right. So there was more to that. The blues down here. I'll get him. I'm going to carefully use his brush. Okay, this is wash 2. My style is kind of a little looser right now. This is not the brush to be using. This is just my style. You can paint every wrinkle. Change the colors up. Okay, I'm gonna jiggy jaggy it in here. This is my style. You can use it or not. But now I can do the same thing I just did with the hair. Now I can say, well, his shirt actually has a highlight. I just dried that. It's thirsty now. Now I'm going to go in here and try to create, and it'll soften out. I'm going to create a little bit of shapes here, and maybe there's his shoulder here and his deal there. But all of a sudden now I've lifted some little shape into his shirt. And because I just put it down. All right, now what do we got? Let me just try to do a little bit more here, and I will summarize the 5-week extravaganza.